Hello everyone, I am going to have a look-see at the latest promotional material released for the upcoming expansion to the 19th century grand strategy game Victoria 3 that updates the game to cover the situation in Austria and in the Balkans a bit better, subjects that I am in some measure familiar with, and here are some of my observations. So this is the new map style that's going to be coming with the thing. It's clearly based on a mixture of Austrian, Balkan, a bit of some like rural pastoral idealism. I think this is supposed to represent Greece and the Olympic Games a bit. More scenes of pastorality. And then we have the other map in the Pacific, which has far more... if you look here, you can see that a part of that famous cartoon where people are grabbing for the Balkans, trying to divide it. I believe that's Turkey, Austria, and Russia there. We have Field Marshal Radetzky here, if I'm not wrong. I believe this could be Empress Sisi. There's of course Prince Metternich, which defined the era, and right next to him is a stereotypical South Slav. Oh, and here we have something interesting. This is apparently a map of the game in 1840. I don't know if any events have happened, because that's 4 years into the game. We have the matter of Hungary, which these are sort of journal entries that spark events and things that are special to the nation. So we have the matter of Hungary and the age of Metternich, which are going to cause special events and conditions to happen. The Schleswig-Holstein question is about the unification of Germany, but I think that was already in the game. Treaty of the Holy Alliance. That's new and interesting. This is added probably with the new treaty system. That's the counter-revolutionary alliance that was made between Berlin, Petersburg, and Vienna. Oh, interestingly, Montenegro appears to be part of the Russian sphere of influence. Keep in mind, the game has progressed a bit to get to these pictures, so it might be different. But most importantly, when we clear all of that away, if we take a look at Austria, I don't know if it starts divided or if that's the new start, because currently in the game it starts as the whole. But now it starts divided into Hungary, the Principality of Transylvania, the Kingdom of Dalmatia, Croatia, and Slavonia, sans Dalmatia, and the entirety rest of what will become Cisleitanian Austria. We get more context for some of these things in the next picture. So if we look at the age of Metternich, National Agenda Journal entry. The aftermath of Napoleonic Wars has established Austria as a leading conservative power in Europe. The leading architect of this conservative order, Clemens von Metternich, has served as Chancellor of Austria since the tumultuous year of 1821. There is an implication to the term Chancellor here that doesn't really work, because Metternich was, although he held a lot of power, he was very restricted by the emperor to just the realm of foreign affairs, and that's where, what was considered foreign affairs. So he was chancellor for mostly foreign affairs with some input on internal policy and things, but he also lacked enough power to start changing things inside the empire. Like a few of his proposals after the Napoleonic Wars for imperial reform were the only things that came back unanswered from the emperor. And so, realizing he couldn't do anything on that front, he turned to things he could do. So he was there to preserve that conservative order in Europe, but he also saw the internal problems, but didn't have the power to resolve them, so he did what he could. His agenda calls for upholding the Austrian autocracy. Yeah, fair. The maintenance of the conservative peace in Europe. Yeah, that's fair. And the promotion of the arts and sciences. Yeah, that's also fair. Because Metternich in the areas he could do, like on his private estates, he was quite forward-thinking and started industrializing things along with the rest of the age, but he couldn't do the same. He couldn't really do the same on the imperial scale because he lacked control of other offices, and, well, other people in the top echelons of the empire also worked to counter Metternich in a lot of things, like Count Kolowrat, who was his internal rival and in charge of imperial finances. Realizing various items chance Metternich will be improved the effective journal entry. These achievements will be scored upon the journal entry successfully completing. Prevent Italian unification. Yet, Germany has not been unified by any other country, so Austria could theoretically unify Germany, but that was never an ambition of Metternich. If Metternich had had his way, the order of 1815 would have continued ad infinitum, because a unified Germany would, it would unbalance the whole diplomatic landscape of Europe. So it's not exactly something Metternich wanted, and a Germany under Austria would also unbalance the whole internal landscape of the empire. Austria owns the entire state region of West Galicia. Ooh, this is interesting. Is this referring to... well, Krakow here. Yeah, probably. It demands that you annex Krakow. All liberal or socialist political movements have marginal support, so that's, in game terms, under 5%. Austria has autocracy, censorship, and secret police. Yeah, that checks out. Metternich was a big user of censorship and secret police. Censorship is actually a bit of a fun topic, because what was really censored were short pamphlets. Like, it was deemed that anything that was above 200 pages long couldn't radicalize anybody, because it was just too long of a read. But a short pamphlet or a short book was deemed dangerous and under censorship. It was also probably because the censorship bureau couldn't be bothered to read anything longer than 200 pages. So there was a practical one. And anything censored was mostly fined and put off the shelves. Like, for all of the problems of the Austrian secret police and the censorship and the autocracy, it was largely better than the things that came afterwards, but people at the time had no idea of knowing what was going to come afterwards, so it was still terrible and bad for them. Home affairs, law enforcement are at level 3 or higher. Yeah, so you need to keep law enforcement high to keep, to keep everyone down. So that checks out as an element of the Metternich system. Like, this is pretty decent, this is pretty accurate. Will complete if Franz Joseph, ages greater or equal to 18. Franz Joseph has become Kaiser. Okay, if completed, Clemens von Metternich will peacefully retire. Triggers the event the end of an age. So this is a scenario in which the 1848 revolutions are avoided. And Metternich isn't scapegoated into being removed. Will fail if at least one of these, any Austrian political movement does something. We can't see because it's not showing us. So if something happens that's not this, the Age of Metternich will fail, which is presumably revolutionary movements. The federal solution. Okay, if we take a look at the map again, it's again 1840. This could be a different game entirely. This is June and this is August. As you can see, Hungary now includes Transylvania and Croatia-Slavonia here. That's probably showing us that that's one of the possible solutions to the Hungarian question, which is no longer here. Friction between the myriad nationalities of Austria has long been a danger to the integrity of the empire. Advocates for the rights of various nationalities have long called for various forms of federalization for the empire, and recent years have brought them in contact with members of the armed forces interested in radical reforms in the name of upholding the dynasty. The proposed United States of Greater Austria, the most recent of the proposal, would abolish the old crown lands and replace them with a selection of self-governing states drawn along ethnic lines. This proposal has been met with opposition from Hungarian politicians who oppose its proposed division of historical Hungary, as well as the South German population, which would likely become minorities within non-German states. Okay, so the specific mention of the armed forces here leads me to believe this is based on the proposals that were made to Archduke Franz Ferdinand way later in the century. Sort of the problem with these federalization proposals was that they would remove the old crown lands and thus the old rights of the nationalities and the nobility and so on, which basically made it difficult for Metternich to attempt to reform the empire because he faced opposition not just from local politicians but from higher up echelons in the government, especially members of the imperial family themselves, that would see their privileges in those lands under attack. But again, it was shot down right out of the gate, and he knew he couldn't do it or, well, risk getting sacked. So he opted for what he thought was the next best alternative, which was maintaining the current order with all the limitations he had on. So, and the opposition to any sort of federalization or any sort of change from the order of the dual monarchy was mostly from Hungarians and from Germans, because Austrian German nationalists wanted unification into Germany. Interesting little map details, like oars here. The compromise. A compromise has been reached as per the agreement of Austria to be reconstituted into the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary, divided into a Transleithanian territory ruled from Buda and a Cisleithanian territory from Vienna. Leithanian refers to the river Leifa that was one of the borders between Austria and Hungary. So Transleithanian is over on the other side of the Leifa, over the Leifa. Cisleithanian is on this side of the Leifa, which does tell you something about how some people saw the empire, who was ours and who was theirs. Establish Transleithania, okay, establish Transleithania in full union with the Triune Kingdom. Now, the Triune Kingdom can, I think, only refer to Dalmatia, Croatia, and Slavonia. Keep the Triune Kingdom under direct Austrian control is... Ooh, that's an interesting option. So, establish Transleithania basically means what we saw Hungary going for a direct rule over Croatia. Establish Transleithania in full union with the Triune Kingdom... Oh, no, hold on. In full union with the Triune Kingdom. So this option is to annex everything. Transleithania would establish it with, I imagine, the Croato-Hungarian compromise in place. It is interesting to note that Hungarians never really had to... There were no terms in Vienna under which Hungary had to give Croatia autonomy. They could have just absorbed it, but for a variety of reasons they didn't. Partially because there was an awareness of history, and there was a political faction within Croatia that did advocate for a union, and there were already discussions about there had been discussions for a decade almost a decade on a sort of deal between the new relationship between Croatia and Hungary. So I imagine that this would mean that Hungary doesn't get Croatia, Slavonia. Instead, it goes to the Cisleithanian region. I do like this. I like the options, although they are quite abstracted into the event, and you appear to Well, in a way, you're picking your poison, because all of these will come with some problems. Because this puts a very unhappy Croatian population into Hungary. This could put an unhappy Croatian population into Austria. And this creates a sort of divided compromise solution. Well, it is a compromise. Ever since the Habsburgs first secured the throne centuries ago, it's independent-minded Hungarian a difficult lot to rule. Confronted by increasingly bellicose demands for autonomy, the administration of Vienna must decide something to the demands of the Hungarian nationalists, or to something force if need be. Hungarian Revolution, the activation of the Springtime of the Peoples journal entry, which is one of the sets of events that affect things and the state of the game, likely empower radical faction in the Hungarian to conflict with the government in Vienna. At least one of these. Establish the dual monarchy. Okay, that's presumably this event that establishes the dual monarchy. If completed, Austria loses the Young Hungarian movement. Oh, yeah, so the political movements and radicalism are a thing that affects the happiness of the population. And this sort of does also affect what you exactly want to do. This is far more to do with the Croatian population than the Hungarian population, because you've already decided to divide the empire. Now you decide if you're going to let what's going to happen to the Triune Kingdom, what's going to happen to the Croats in this part of the empire. Will they have some form of autonomy? Will they be directly ruled from Buda, or will they be directly ruled from Vienna, taking Croatia, Slavonia away from Hungary, which would be explosive, because Hungarian politicians still saw Croatia, Slavonia as a part of the kingdom, and there was a faction in Croatia that saw itself with closer ties to Hungary than to Vienna, especially after a time. This tended to happen after a time of prolonged direct rule from Vienna, like in the 1780s, 1850s, when Vienna becomes the center of political power that is responsible for everything that goes wrong, quote unquote. The movement for better ties with Hungary gains strength. But I imagine that this also means that there is some sort of a similar radical movement for Croatia if this needs to be addressed, if this has any effect on the state of the game. I'm also debating whether this should be a decision made by Austria, because when Franz Josef made the agreement with Counts Deák and Andrássy, he basically left over the line was drawn where the kingdoms would divide, and everything in Hungary became Hungarian business, with a few points of joint policy. So this isn't really a decision. This isn't a decision that Austria weighed in on historically. Instead, it was left up to the Hungarians what to do with Croatia, and they opted for another compromise solution on the Austro-Hungarian model, where some business was joint, some business was separate. But this bottom option is really the option that tells you that you can interfere into this, which I like as a historical option. Promulgate the 12 points. The 12 points are this... they're the basic demands of the Hungarian revolutionaries in 1848. So, freedom of the press was a big thing, Hungarian government for Hungary, again, the National Assembly in Budapest on a yearly basis, which was a centuries-old demand, 600 years. That demand has been the Hungarian repertoire for 600 years before this. Their own army, I think, was part of it. I think it was also full union with Croatia and Transylvania, those sorts of things. Their demands made in 1848, An Austrian ultimatum threatening military action. The government in Vienna has unlawfully and unilaterally annulled our recent reforms and now demands we fall back in line. Yeah, these are some of the events of 1848 where at first the government in Vienna has no choice but to go with the demands and the reforms and everything. And then when it feels itself solving issues in Austria, putting down the revolution in Vienna, getting the army out and prepared, then it goes in and starts to crush the Hungarian demands and reforms, and which naturally causes the wars of 1848 in Hungary. I like the new Austrian-specific uniforms. Before, Austria used generic uniforms from all over the place. I wonder if they'll get some sort of headwear or something. Oh, here we see better. Croatia, Slavonia, Hungary, Transylvania. This is January 4th, 1836, so I imagine the game starts like this, which is a very interesting start for 1836. Actually, the Hungarian Diet is kind of summoned back into session in 1830. Croatia has its political meetings and political movements happen. So I hope Croatia has some content, you know, being Croatian. I'm looking forward to see if and how they depict anything. Although some of the advertising blurb doesn't give me a lot of confidence in that, but we'll see. Following an assembly of Sremski Karlovci, representatives of the Serbian nation in Hungary have risen in revolt intended carving up a Serbian-ruled realm north of the river Sava. Mobilize the army and strike these Viennese lapdogs down for the Honored Cross and Golden Liberty. Well, that's a slogan of something. Does it sort of turn you... Does it let you play as the Serbian uprising here if you're playing Hungary? Because there were uprisings in Transylvania, modern-day northern Serbia, which was part of Hungary, and of course the big, the 1848 revolution in Croatia, which goes on to invade Hungary to crush the revolution in Hungary. Now we move on to the Serbian or Balkan content, which you do have the division between the Karađorđević and the Obrenović families that fought between each other and for Serbian autonomy and then independence from the Ottomans. This was like a seesaw that was happening in Serbia from one house to the other. Raiding, this appears to be something that's for Montenegro. So raiding apparently gives you some level of income, and you can either discourage it to prevent the Ottomans' wrath, I imagine, or encourage it to bring you in more income. This is an event for some nation that is about to fight the Ottomans. Oh, this is Greece! Okay, this is for Greece, I think. That is about to try and fight the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, because in the previous versions of the game, Greece did not do much to fight the Ottomans. Oh, you can see a little Greek ruin there. Let's see what else we have. The image of a late-game Serbian officer. While Serbia has taken its first step towards nationhood, it remains a land of peasants. Much of the populace continues to view the world through the lens of village and clan. As will fail. It has formed Yugoslavia. Interesting. What date is this? This is 1929. Oh, we can see that. That was a very weird game that happened here. Like. Look at India. Look what Russia did. Look what Russia did. This appears to be one of the members of the Montenegrin ruling family. He has 2 guns and a knife in his belt. This is probably just showing off the character model and the new building structures here, which are interesting. Is this a special building, or is it just a generic building for something? I don't know. Ooh, Montenegro receives Russian aid. Interesting. So their meager income is supplemented through raids and through Russian aid. Okay, that's interesting. So they're trying to make Montenegro far more playable than it is currently. The Great Eastern Crisis, developing crisis. The future of the Ottoman Empire is at a crossroads. A growing number of secessionist political movements threaten the stability of the nation. Okay. This is another thing for probably for the sick man of Europe. So this entry intensifies secessionist movements. Ottoman Empire is not having growth secession. Ottoman Empire is at peace. Any Ottoman political movement is secessionist. Movement culture is Serbian. Why just Serbian? Why not also Bulgarian? And then we get to the Stellan page, which is... I've only put this up because I find it interesting that they're chasing Hungarian revolutionaries on the rooftops of Vienna. Which isn't impossible, but it is interesting. Yugoslav Unification Journal entry, including Yugoslavia or Illyria. Oh, this is interesting. As potential regional power. The Croatian National Awakening Movement was also known as the Illyrian Movement, trying to tie the nation to the old Illyrian tribes in the early 19th centuries, establish freedom from Ottoman rule, and establish the reputation of Prussia on the Balkans for Bulgaria. The Balkan Wars, new content to encourage a united Balkan front against the exhausted Ottoman Empire in Europe. Okay, we didn't see any material for that. So I like quite a few of the things. I'll see what I'll do when the development diaries finally show up, but I hope this was interesting. I don't know. I just rambled on for about an hour right now. I have hopes that this will be good, and we'll see how it works in the developer diaries to come, and so have a nice day, everybody. Thank you for watching, and see you later, and sorry for the rambling, but that's what you signed up for if you're at this point.